Welcome to Weather Extra. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Jillian Grace. We had a round of thunderstorms late last week in central Texas, but overall our week was pretty quiet. But it wasn't like that for everyone across the globe. We get Weather Extra started by taking a look back at some of this week's top weather stories in the U.S. and across the world. Check it out. As 2022 came to an end and we made our way into 2023, California got slammed with a series of atmospheric river events. Rounds of heavy historic rain and snow fell across the Golden State. And now another event slammed into the state late last week into this weekend, which brought some highly populated regions in extreme risk of flash flooding. For California's coast and valleys, several inches of rain brought widespread flood alerts. Mudslides kept residents on high alert as well. New additional heavy snow across the higher elevations of the state, with some reaching to around 100 inches, with wind gusts over 100 miles per hour reported as well. And just as heavy rain and snow have been falling along the west coast, places like Utah and Arizona, a little further inland, have seen more rain and snow this winter than they have for almost 30 years. But just like California, while all of the snow and rain is a good thing for those states, they can still create dangerous and deadly conditions, and that's what happened in Utah last week. An avalanche in Summit County, Utah, killed at least one person on Thursday. The massive snowslide took place about 2.5 hours east of Salt Lake City. Authorities responded to a call of 2 people buried in the snow. One person died, and the second person was taken to a nearby hospital. And in Indonesia, at least 10 people have died in a landslide caused by heavy rain coupled with unstable soil conditions. Local officials say rescues and evacuations are still underway, but due to strong winds and high waves, they're having a hard time during the search and rescue process. And look at this snowy view in the United Kingdom, where trains and schools were canceled and many drivers got stuck on major roadways as a blast of snow and wind hit across the UK, making roadways impassable. One local meteorologist said the hard-hit areas were in northern England and northern Wales, where 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts and nearly a foot of snow fell. And Antarctic sea ice is at a record low level. A satellite measurement shows it was 691,000 square miles on February 21st, down from 741,000 last year. Scientists say climate change could be the reason, but some say it's too early to make a conclusive link. And the reason is because the Antarctic sea ice decline hasn't been persistent like it's been in the Arctic. Researchers have expressed concern about the ice shelf holding back the Thwaites Glacier in western Antarctica. They say it could shatter in the coming years and cause a devastating sea level rise. Did you notice the later sunset today? Well, we're in the second Sunday of March, which means it's time for daylight saving time to begin, which did officially kick off at 2 last night. So if you're feeling a little sleepy today, it may be because we lost an hour of sleep. But check out how our sunset times changed over the weekend. Now, the sun set at 6:33 on Saturday evening, and then since we advanced our clocks 1 hour forward last night, tonight's sunset was at 7:34. And look at how our sunset times will change over the summer. Now, starting around the middle of April, Central Texas will start to see sunsets around 8 p.m. Now, the longest day of the year, or when our summer solstice occurs, is on June 21st. On that day, we have 14 hours and 12 minutes of daylight. Now, the latest sunset time Central Texas sees throughout the year is going to be late June, which is around 8:37. We start to see our days begin to get a little bit shorter later in July. Now, switching gears and not talking about time change anymore, let's talk more about our spring-like temperatures that we've been feeling over the past few weeks. But it's been a while since Central Texas has seen below freezing temperatures. Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor joins us for a deeper dive on how many freezes we've seen this year and when it's okay to start to do that spring planting. Brady.
You know, we're getting to that time of year where a lot of folks want to get outside and start doing more gardening, planting flowers, stuff like that. But you get worried, are we done with freezes? So I thought we'd give you a little quick recap on that. Our first freeze of the season was back on November 12th. The last one that we've seen so far was back in February, middle of the month, on February 18th. But that adds up to a good bit. Let's show you how we went through each of the months. Back in November, we had 4. December and January had 13 freezes each month. And in February, we had 9 freezes. So that puts our total up to 39, which is actually more than we typically see through the wintertime months. Our average last freeze, we're getting right to that point, March 11th. But the latest freeze that we've ever seen is April 15th. Now, the good news is here in the least short term, we don't expect to freeze, and it's getting less and less likely that we do. But one caveat, we've only went 2 out of the last 20 years that we've made it all the way through March without seeing a freeze. So it's getting less and less likely, but until we end out the month of March, we can't get completely past the point where we can say, yeah, we're not seeing any more freezes.
Thanks, Brady. With us now in the month of March, that means the spring is near and our severe weather season has officially began. For more tools to keep you and your family safe and aware of this spring storm season, here's meteorologist Sean Bellafiore.
This past week was Severe Weather Awareness Week here in Central Texas. In partnership with the National Weather Service office in Fort Worth, we wanted to take a deep dive into some of the topics that were covered from the Weather Service in regards to severe weather awareness. It's the beginning of the season. It's the perfect time to get yourself acclimated or reacclimated with what to do when severe weather strikes over the next couple of months. Now, the first topic we went over is probably the most important one, and that is an overall disaster preparedness topic. Now, how will you know when severe weather strikes? This is really important, especially for those nighttime severe weather events. This article not only goes through some of the warning processes from the National Weather Service office, but we also take a deeper dive into how to set up your free KWTX weather app to make sure it alerts you at any time of day when severe weather strikes in exactly your location, so you can go through and set that app up step by step. We also, of course, talk about disaster preparedness kits and take a deep dive into severe weather too. We have an article about tornadoes as well, including this. This is one of my favorite images, of course, a GIF, moving image of how a tornado comes to be. We also talk about lightning, and one of the things you may not know about lightning, it's technically not considered severe. And the reason for that is because you don't have to have a severe thunderstorm to have lightning. Those run-of-the-mill thunderstorms we get during the summertime months, those typically aren't severe but can produce a lot of lightning. We also take a deep dive into kind of what we've been seeing already this severe weather season, a couple of severe thunderstorms, including talking about hail, how hail forms. We also talk about severe weather in form of wind gusts. I mean, did you know that a microburst with some of these thunderstorms can produce winds of 150 miles plus? And of course, we also talk about flooding as well. That is a dangerous type of severe weather that happens year round. In order to find all of these articles, go to our website, kwtx.com/find it. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
Coming up next on Weather Extra, we dive into this week's Degrees of Science, where Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor sits down with the Warning Coordination Meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Fort Worth. The interview is coming up right after the break.
Welcome into this week's Degrees of Science. When we deal with severe weather and any types of weather, you'll get watches and warnings that'll be issued. But where those watches and warnings come from and what all work goes into it, most folks may not know. Well, this week we're talking with Jennifer Dunn, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Fort Worth. How much lead time do y'all hope to give folks when it comes to severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings?
Well, the truthful answer is as much as possible, but there is a delicate balance as we're finding out through social science. I think our goals are about 15 minutes before the severe criteria or the tornado develops. That's about a good average time, but we can have much more lead time on that, especially for cities, towns, locations that might be further downstream from the storm. They may have longer lead time than that. But between the time that we issue the warning versus when it starts producing severe or tornadic activity, a general goal of about 15 minutes is where we're at. And then we try to update about somewhere between 15 to 25 or 30 minutes, just depending on how the storm is evolving, to provide new, fresh updates to people who are in the path of what may be coming at them. Now, throughout our warning process, if we need to, we can issue a warning fairly quickly. I can get a tornado warning out, or anyone here, if I had to, within 30 seconds. It can be that quick. Our system is able to draw up a preliminary polygon. It has base text, kind of text formatted already in it, so I can make quick edits and ship it out in less than 30 seconds in maybe a rapidly evolving situation where we're trying to get as much lead time. It's likely going to be less than 15 minutes.
And you were talking about the updates, and that's one thing that's awesome with the new changes that y'all do at the Weather Service. Talk about how y'all can even change this style of warning, say for tornado warning, from radar indicated to observed, and really help us on the media side get out that vital information as stuff's changing, becoming more dangerous, potentially deadly.
Yeah, there have been certain enhancements to our warning products, how we have formatted them in more of a hopefully easy to read bullet style, but also allowing us to add some additional information, not saying we couldn't before, but makes it a little bit easier to add some improved communication and additional information to it. So you're right, choosing what type of source is a big value to it, because whether it's radar observed versus somebody that has actually seen it and is reporting it, knows it's going on, that makes a big difference to some people and to us as well, having that validation and that verification, as long as you mentioned, pushing out an enhanced messaging to the public about this threat that we know it's confirmed. And then depending on kind of the strength of some of these storms, the type of severe weather it's producing, or the size, whether it's, we know maybe it's a little bit of a stronger, bigger tornado, or it's larger size hail, we can add additional enhanced wording quickly into those to help with that message and pushing out that information.
So tell folks how big of an area your forecast office covers, because there are a lot of counties in a very active severe weather area to keep an eye on.
Yes, we cover 46 counties, is what we call North and Central Texas. So we cover from a couple of counties along the Red River, down through Central Texas to Bell County and to Milam and Robertson County, so kind of along that line of Fort Hood there. We have a little bit into East Texas, or basically we're between Tyler and Abilene. So everything in between there, kind of in a square box. 46 counties is our coverage area. So it's not just Central Texas. On the media market too, we deal with North Texas, Texoma, East Texas, and a little bit of the Big Country, and some of Austin as well. So a lot of broadcast partners to help us really spread the message of what the threats are and what safety actions people should be taking.
Tell some of our folks maybe one or two of the big events you remember, and just how crazy it gets inside y'all's office keeping an eye on those storms.
So the first one that comes to mind will be the day after Christmas, the December 26, 2015 event. I was one radar operator that day. Because of the scope of the event, the size of it, we actually had to sectorize into different parts of our area. And I had everything east of 35, which is where a lot of the tornadoes were. And so everybody just has their assigned role, and you get to a point where there's so much going on that some of the smaller roles have to be dropped. Like I think in that case, we maybe weren't providing as much updates every 15 to 20 minutes as we would have liked to have, because we had to pull that person who was doing that in to be a radar operator over here from the cold front that was coming in. Most people probably don't remember there was a cold front coming in with storms also. So we sometimes have to split and shift and sectorize and redo our duties as we go through an event, trying to prioritize, of course, warnings, but communication plays a big role in that too, making sure that our partners have the information that they need to protect their communities, and also to share the information out so people can take those protective actions.
That day after Christmas, the cold front, we were cutting in over the Sun Bowl, and it was snowing in El Paso for the Sun Bowl. That's how crazy that weather day was for sure.
To learn more about what the National Weather Service does when severe weather moves through our area, head on over to our website, KWTX.com/degrees of science, or you can just scan the QR code on your screen. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. The fastest growing metro region in the United States is running out of water. It's St. George, Utah, where new homeowners should not plan to have a traditional yard. CNN's Bill Weir visited the area and shares his story.
In a bright red county, in a state allergic to government regulations, it is against the law to plant new grass around your business. Only about 8% of a home's landscaping can include lawn. And if you want to start an endeavor that guzzles a lot of water, you are free to look somewhere else.
If somebody wanted to come and build a golf course today, I don't know where they would get the water from. And I'm telling you, I know where every drop of water is.
Zach Renstrom is in charge of the water of Washington County, Utah, which holds the fastest growing metro area in the nation in a region that's suffering the worst mega drought in 1,200 years.
We like our independence, we like our freedoms, we do not like government regulation.
But that combo of a lot more people and a lot less water has forced some of the toughest water laws in the nation.
We're developing plans that basically say during a drought situation that there can be absolutely no outside watering for any type of anything, even for like trees. We also talk about cutting off our construction water. And I know that's like, oh, well, what's the big deal with construction water? But if we stop construction water, That act alone would lay off about 20% of our county.
So like a lot of folks around here, he's counting on Utah to build an estimated $2.2 billion pipeline to pump water from Lake Powell across 140 miles of desert and into this Washington County reservoir. A hugely controversial idea passed by state lawmakers 17 years ago. But when the Trump administration tried to fast-track the environmental review, the 6 other states that depend on the Colorado River system took a rare step of banding together to stop it.
The system is crashing. To be honest, it's kind of incomprehensible to think of a diversion of that size that would serve 200,000 people in one county in southern Utah at this moment in time. There's just not the water.
For environmental advocates like Matt Rice of American Rivers, developing with a pipeline mentality makes less sense now than ever.
We're in a place where everybody across the board, lower basin, upper basin, agriculture, municipalities, we have to be laser focused on doing more with less water, because that's our future. That is our reality.
One of the most beautiful places on the face of the earth is how I describe it. It's like living in a national park.
Chris Hart is the mayor of Ivins, a town of 10 grand that's growing just as fast as the rest of Washington County.
As you look at our new city hall, the landscaping around this building requires no water.
It's beautiful too.
We don't irrigate.
And it fits the landscape,
yeah,
right?
I mean, it's exactly what a desert landscape ought to look like.
You got some attention in just a community meeting calling it the Lake Powell Pipe Dream.
Shame on me.
No, but I guess it felt like a candid moment there.
I actually use that word tongue-in-cheek because the serious side of it is that it is an essential part of our plan. I think from our perspective from the state of Utah is we're entitled to our share when the acknowledgement of what's happening with climate change and the reduction of flow, whatever that translates into, we'll live within that. We're looking at a situation here that resembles, on a much smaller scale, what happened in California and Arizona and Las Vegas. They've had their enormous growth spurts through the years, and the water has been made available for them to do that. And now here we are, Utah, little old Utah.
But in the meantime, thanks to the new infrastructure bill and Inflation Reduction Act, there are billions of federal dollars for towns like Ivins to take water reclamation to the next level. And like Las Vegas, capture, treat, and recycle every drop possible.
So the few drops of rain that we get, if we can use them 4 or 5 times, that's a whole different thing than the drop of rain comes, you use it, and off it goes down the river.
But he knows better than most. Living through climate change in the West means living with a culture change around water.
The month of March is Women's History Month, and in this week's Moment of Science, Dan Smith is shedding light on discoveries, inventions, and innovations made by women. Take a look.
Last month, we explored the amazing contributions by Black scientists to all walks of life, both seen and unseen. Now, it's Women's History Month, and it's time to shine a spotlight once more on breaking the glass ceiling through the centuries. Chances are your mind's already gone to Marie Curie, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize for her work in radioactivity, but many do not know that her daughter Irene earned a prize of her own 32 years after her mother. Talk about your nuclear family. While Lise Meitner never received the prize, Albert Einstein himself dubbed her Germany's Marie Curie, discovering nuclear fission after she fled the Nazis in 1938. Backing up the timeline a bit, Mary Anning grew up a poor, self-taught paleontologist. One day she dug up what she thought was a crocodile skeleton, but it ended up being the first complete fossil of a dinosaur. Later in life, she added 2 more complete fossilized discoveries to her resume. Speaking of earth science, we used to think the Earth's core was molten through and through, but in 1929, a New Zealand earthquake helped Inga Lehmann shake up that model when she realized the seismic waves she studied must have been bouncing off a solid inner core. From looking inward to looking upward, Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin correctly determined that hydrogen was about 1 million times more abundant in this universe than anyone thought at the time. But at the time, no one believed a woman could make such an incredible discovery, and she was dismissed. We had talked about NASA's hidden figures in our Black History episode, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention these pioneers once more who helped launch American men into the final frontier. At the same time, the Mercury 13 women passed the same grueling physical test as the Mercury 7 men, though none ever made it past the surly bonds of Earth. That honor went to astronaut Sally Ride in 1983. Finally, Rosalind Franklin was working on discovering the double helix DNA model we know today when a colleague showed her X-ray work to Watson and Crick, who won the Nobel Prize 4 years after Franklin had died of ovarian cancer. To his credit, Watson had asked for her to be awarded the prize as well, but the Nobel Committee does not make posthumous nominations. The scientific journey is often fraught with hardship and lack of credit where credit is due. Again, I encourage you to read up on the countless contributions to science by women throughout history. For this week's Moment of Science, I'm Dan Smith.
And before we go tonight, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said La Nina has officially ended and El Nino is on the way. So what does that mean for our weather? Well, El Nino is associated with a band of warm water in the Pacific Ocean, which impacts weather patterns around the globe. It generally increases hurricane activity in the Pacific, but has the opposite effect in the Atlantic. We also usually see a spike in temperatures with El Nino. 2022 was the warmest La Nina on record. Forecasters say the next year or two will likely climb even higher on the list of hottest years on record. And coming up next week on Weather Extra, meteorologist Sean Bellafury will dive more into El Nino and what it means for us right here in Central Texas. But that's all we have for you on this episode of Weather Extra. Have a great week and good night.